Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Circle coverage here on RHAP. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and we are here today to talk through the newest batch, the latest batch of Circle episodes, the second batch of season 6 of the Circle. And with me to talk about it, it's my bro Code Bros. It's Mike Bloom. How you doing, Mike?
Taran, I am great. I did take the liberty, like these contestants, of drawing a portrait for you and Pooya. There's nothing on it because there's nothing poor about you two.
All right, Lauren.
Yeah.
She's a friend to everyone is a friend to no one.
Listen, both my faces are not that good looking, so good luck.
Well, also joining us here is Pooya. How you doing, Pooya?
I'm doing good. I did not bring a drawing of the two of you because they say a picture's worth 1,000 words, but you two are worth way more than that. So no picture for you.
There you go, then.
Taran, say something nice about us now. It's your turn.
Come on, complete the triangle.
You know what? You're both my ride or dies.
Wow. You would never sacrifice yourself. Don't even.
Come on. You are AF.
The way we would both get eliminated on the spot.
Hey, but we wouldn't be lowest rated.
That's
We'd
true.
Be fine.
That's true. We would be.
I don't know, because then we get like, oh, you know what? I think Tara would be fine if I'd said, like, who's the most likely to kick a dog. And it's fine. We just talked. I think he'd be okay with it. He won't take offense.
I would definitely take offense. If somebody put me as their fit person, I'd be like, I am dedicating my life in this game to eliminating you.
All right, well, now we see who's the Jordan fan amongst the three of us, of just dedicating a blood vow to taking someone out unprompted.
Because hold on, we'll talk about Big J, but like, he has no reason to do what he's doing.
Yep.
He just decided one day that he was going to choose violence and that Miles was his victim.
Oh my God.
All right, well, let's listen. There's clearly a lot to get into, so let's get straight into it. We started this block of episodes, this drop of 4 batch of episodes, concluding the cliffhanger from the previous 4. And lo and behold, as expected, by the time this came up, it was like, wait, what's happening? Who cares? Oh, right. This, okay, and it's Steffi. All right.
Yeah, well, I mean, we kind of nailed it on our prediction at the end of the last week's episode. I mean, ultimately, the whole thing was, okay, you're the least likely to be AI. Guess the AI. Steffi gets guessed by Miles, and low key, I feel bad for Steffi because that's not even the elimination that I'm here to talk about from that episode. Because we sat here for an hour and a half last week, bigging up the producer, bigging up the show. Listen, this new twist with the AI, love it. We talked strategy of like, how would they have the AI be at the end? And maybe they don't want it to win. They don't count the ratings. What happened to the AI, Mike?
AI unmasked. I called it, man. I said this was a Spice Girls. I said this was a fake Michelle. This was an opening week and change twist where after Steffi is revealed to be the real Steffi, I mean, once you do that, like, it has to be a certain configuration of plot puzzle pieces where if you hadn't revealed that someone was AI, you could still keep going because then Steffi's revealing herself as real. Great, she's not a catfish. We're moving on. But because they focused on, okay, sniff out who the AI is, and I had the great pleasure of getting to speak with the showrunner and executive producer Susan House, as well as co-EP Niall O'Driscoll, about how this entire twist came to be. And they brought up some salient points that admittedly was their own doing of once we introduce that there's an AI, the entire show is just going to be focused on find the AI.
Yeah.
And so it kind of did feel like it, for those couple of episodes, the momentum of like regular Circle gameplay kind of stopped in favor of doing that. And so if Steffi revealed herself to be real, then obviously everyone would be like, but wait, there's still an AI out there. We got to focus on that. And it's starting to then kind of evolve into a different show in and of itself. So due to the circumstances they set up, unfortunately, Max had to unmask his angular self.
Yeah, I just feel like that shouldn't have been it.
Tell us your feelings.
First of all, after Steffi's goodbye message, whatever we call it, the Max like Apple trash computer,
Mhm.
whatever it is, Xbox 580, pops up on the screen. And my first instinct was, "Oh, this is hilarious. The AI is going to taunt them."
I would have
Like,
loved
Yeah, I like that.
"You didn't catch me. I'm still one of you, and you don't even know who." And then go back into hiding. But then as they start to and actually, I here's my bippity boppity boo, and I was like, "Oh my god, are you serious?" And, like, let me tell you, I spend a lot of time angry, upset with reality TV producers. You know, I have lots of rants. I have
Mhm.
lots of opinions. When Max dipped out of this game, I wasn't mad. I was disappointed.
Aw.
I
Yeah,
was
you
just
were sort of
genuinely
like, "I can't believe I had hope that this
I d
time it would
yeah,
be different."
I was just genuinely disappointed. I was just like, "Oh, that's such a bummer. I was really enjoying this, and you just took it away."
I will say I've been loving seeing the discourse about this AI because obviously when the season got announced and we saw the cast and there was a mention of AI, that was a lot of the conversation. But it was
Mm.
very fun in this past week watching people react to this. And there's people that were in similar camps to us where they were very high on this AI being there was a twist. There was also people that weren't loving it, that were like, I'm going to be rooting against it. But I felt like that was kind of the perfect mix of you actively have people who don't want anything to do with this and want it to fail, and you have people that are like, let me see how it goes. I will say, Mike, to your point, with the showrunners mentioning that, hey, we kind of shot ourselves in the foot by potentially, making it so that it's going to be AI Hunt season 1 if we keep it in. Now, perfect. Next season, put an AI in there as a cast member. Don't put it a part of the twist. Don't make it a thing. Don't announce it. Because I think because of the way they did it, they could get away with it still being a surprise twist next
Yeah.
time.
So I actually want to briefly derail us about discourse as well, because we put out our podcast, right when the episodes dropped as the crow flew, and so we didn't really necessarily get a sense to Puya's point as to how people were responding. I've seen some interesting stuff, not just in response to the AI twist, but this season so far. And it does make a lot of sense to me because the Circle is one of those shows that I think people do watch for different reasons. And what I will say about this season, especially as we're going to get into this next batch of episodes, which I think really does showcase what Michelle said about this being the most strategic season of the Circle, that yes, Max is gone, but you have people that are still playing
Oh, yeah.
hard. And I think for some people, they have been looking to the Circle from the beginning as more of a social experiment, more of the social in social strategy. I've seen, several posts kind of bemoaning we'll never get a bromance between Joey and Shuby again. We can't cast any more Tim Wilsons. Why are we bringing in all of these influencers? And look, I understand their perspective of if you are watching the show as more comfort food of this is something to put on in the background to watch, people I like getting to talk with people that they may not usually and make their way through the game. I can absolutely understand why maybe this season won't be your cup of tea. For me, as much as I loved, our last two winners as an example, was it the most thrilling game of social strategy to watch? No. And so for what it's been ticking in terms of my oxytocin levels of watching these people actually almost from a communal aspect, I think really start to figure out what strategic moves should be made versus what personal moves, and trying to divorce that, but also get their emotions involved. It has felt like a significant step for the show that I'm really vibing with. But again, depending on what you're sort of watching the show for, and I'm experiencing this a bit as well with Amazing Race going on, I could see why some people are feeling like this isn't the cast for me. I'm not into the strategy. AI, what's been going on with the Circle?
Yeah, I mean, I think like from my perspective, like that's kind of par for the course in terms of a reception to any season of a reality show. I mean, even just look at Survivor this season,
Yeah.
which has been chock full of complainers up until the point where it got like super exciting, and now people are like, no, I actually always loved this season and this cast. And it's so yeah. I mean, I think that I think there's always going to be complaints. I think that people can say this cast is full of influencers or whatever, but like a that's like literally the point, but also b that has always been the case. That was always the case from get go. In fact, Miles himself is the same archetype, a similar archetype as Joey, as like all like they love this archetype of like bring in a bro who's gonna seem really broy and douchey, but he's actually got a heart. They love it on the Circle, and it does well for them. But like these are all the same. They're all the same people. They're all the same. Like it's all fine. Like we can chill about the cast, I think. And I do think this cast is good. And I think it's good because they are looking to play a little more strategically and they aren't just like focused. And because I think that's the biggest, most consistent complaint I see about the show is who cares about the catfish? It's so annoying watching them do catfish hunting all the time, when it doesn't even matter. Um, and it does feel like they have dropped that for the most
Yeah.
part.
Yeah.
And instead they're here to play the game, and that's more consequential. And I think that it plays more into what people will be looking for when they watch the show. And so I guess I'll be curious to see what the response is to this batch of episodes. But I do think this is a stronger version of the Circle in terms of something that will allow people to latch onto it in a more long-term sense. I mean, I'm constantly curious about just the way that these formats work, especially when they originate in another country and how they come to the US. Obviously, famously, Big Brother came to the US, very different. Audience voted everything. The US turned it into a strategy game. And then the US version went on to outlast every other version of the show. And we are now watching a US version of The Circle that has outlasted the original UK version. And there's always gonna be a little bit of, I think, friction because when the audience isn't as in control and when there is more focus on the strategy, I think it does piss the audience off more because it's frustrating. But that's part of the draw in a lot of ways. As long as they're frustrated with the players and with like maybe the direction that the players are taking the game and not frustrated or bored with the producers and the show as a whole, I think that's what actually locks the audience in to come back every time because they could always bring in players you do like, or something good might happen with the right framework. If the framework is okay, then everything else can fall into place, and you might be willing to tune in more often. I
Mhm.
think, but
Mm.
I'm always interested to see how this goes.
Yeah, I do feel like season 6 feels like a break in the pattern in momentum where again, I think seasons 4 and 5 just kind of locked into this formula that we accessed in seasons 1 and 2, which is just, hey, be really likable and glom onto like a couple of people and you'll be fine. Don't worry about it. And don't be a catfish unless you're Delisa. And it feels like this season we're getting so many mentions of this person's a threat. I've got to take him out. Like again, that's not language we necessarily are used to. And it's very fun, again, coming from this background, watching these types of shows of 20 plus years to be brought into that side of things. Another great thing about this cast is that they feel so inauthentic in these chats. There's, a couple of exceptions. Like, obviously, we'll get into the big, like, Olivia Kyle conversation that ended up saving Olivia's ass at the end of the day.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I really do like that people are kind of bullshitting with each other almost all the time. They're playing again more like that Survivor, more like that Big Brother thing, where especially someone like QT is keeping so many plates spinning at once that it's less so about I've got to be my authentic self to get people on my side, and more so like I've just got to keep all these plates spinning right now to keep everything as the status quo, so I maintain my power.
And can I just like quickly say that the fact that we're seeing them be more fake is more real than the Circle has ever been before. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah.
Because like that's they've all been fake. let's be honest about it. They've all been fake. It's just that the show either didn't show it or they didn't admit it to the cameras. But like, it's a game. They're all playing the game, and the final ratings always show, who's actually playing what, right? And I'm not saying everyone. There were certainly genuine people, and I don't blame them for being fake either. In fact, I applaud them more than the people probably that are genuine on a competition reality show. But like, the fact that we're seeing them actively be fake is so refreshing because it's so much more honest. It's so much more genuine to the experience of what we're watching, that I feel so much more invested, because it feels like an actual realistic, genuine expression of these people.
And one of the other things that I'm really enjoying about this cast, and that has made me feel very strongly, depending on how the end game goes and how the overall season ends, this could be my favorite Netflix season of The Circle, when all is said and done. So we'll see. But I love the different hybrid of people we have. Let me explain what I mean. I feel like QT is like the perfect example of someone who has found the mix of both social whilst also being strategic without letting anybody know. And I think that is a phenomenal move on her part. And I've been enjoying watching her play the game out. But then you have someone like Paul, who went all strategic all the time from the beginning and has just played awfully the entire way through.
I love when Caress wakes up in episode 5 being like, my game plan is to build alliances. What were you calling the previous 4 episodes? This is building alliances?
And then you have someone like Lauren, who literally by middle of episode 5 has lost every alliance she's had, every allegiance, and has to basically start from scratch after being the first influencer, essentially, which is very fun to watch play out. And I think what's funny to me is that even the 2 new people that get brought in this batch, they are very different type of players. I'm actually very, very curious to hear your thoughts on Big J when we get to it. But Big J is fascinating because Big J is giving me, you clearly know what you should be doing in the game. Like, you've clearly studied, but also you're still fumbling it, in my opinion. Like, hard.
I mean, should I just say that, like, Big J's kind of giving me Frenchie vibes a little bit?
Here's the thing. I'm always very hesitant to like really rail on somebody in general, but especially when it's an edited show.
Sure.
So I want to make sure that I say that, like, I'm talking about the edited version of Big J, the one that is being portrayed on my screen. I hate it. He's so annoying.
I love it. I love it so much. Because again, I love the energy that he's bringing, though. And again, like what he sort of represents, and kind of now setting up like him and QT as these kind of like 2 sides of the same coin of just being these like hyper gamers that really see things first and foremost through a strategic lens. But to your point, Pooya, QT was able to accumulate all this social capital so that she's like, okay, I've got a hedge fund here. I've got a blue chip, IRA over here. And Big J is like, great. I'm putting it all on black. Spin the roulette wheel. It's like, you got it. And especially as a latecomer, like, you got to invest. And we'll talk about, like, I think his choice in catfishing, quote unquote, even though it's just another version of himself, is super interesting. And I love the thinking he has about things like, okay, I'll be able to mask my deceptiveness a little bit, and how his own perception right now may come across, but he's not straying too far. He's not saying, oh, I'm going to be this complete other person. I'm just being a previous version of himself. I think on paper, being like, if I take out Miles, this connects me to Kyle and QT. I could slip and be the 3rd member of Tres Fuegos 2.0, and we make our way there. It's just that, like, he has read the book about how to take out a Jenga piece, but when he actually approaches it, his hands get a little shaky. And as a result, I think the tower's certainly going to wobble as he starts to really make his moves here.
Yeah, to be clear, I don't. That was a joke. I don't hate. I feel like I made the joke and then we went straight into like serious discussion. But like, I think that in terms of like the character we're seeing on the screen, the thing that frustrates me about Big J is that I don't feel like I truly understand his motivations. Like, he came into the circle building, whatever we want to call it, And it just very quickly was like, okay, Miles is popular. He's in control of things. He needs to go. And I was like, okay, I can see why that would make sense. But then very quickly, Miles fell out of favor. It wasn't Miles anymore. It was Kyle.
Yeah.
And he was like, but I want to be friends with Kyle. So he tried to be friends with Kyle. And Kyle was like, no, dude.
Kyle aired him hard.
Totally shut him down.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, maybe he'll change up his strategy at this point because he knows that, because he's like, I need to take out Miles in order to be friends with Kyle. It's like, maybe he'll change his strategy because Kyle doesn't want to be friends with him. But no, he's still like throughout the rest of the time, he's so dead set on taking out Miles. And I'm just so confused as to like what this, because he's an entirely strategically focused character, but I don't understand his strategy, and that's very frustrating.
Let's rewind back to the very beginning when Big J and Autumn get into the, let's say, Circle apartment or Circle complex. I also don't know what to say. But when they get in, people could choose to pitch a DM to each of them, and then they would select who to talk to. Correct me if I'm wrong. Miles was the one that got approved by Big J, right?
Because Miles had said, oh, I was just an influencer and I can share with you all the tea. And so Big J's assumption was, okay, he has power, so I'm more likely to believe information from him than any other person, because clearly, like, he has probably more correct reads on the game.
Well, I think also like this, it's good to get in with the guy who has the most power, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. But to me, it was fascinating because then it became, okay, Miles is hella influential. I need him up out of here. But you were also the first person that he knows he's the first person to have talked to you. So if anything, let him think you're in his pocket. Like, I think that's the move.
Right. Like typically how that would work is like, okay, I have an in with Miles. I want to take out his allies, QT or Kyle, so I can continue to get closer to him.
Right.
And he remains a big threat because he's been the influencer, and I get to like, right. But I'm just like,
yeah,
like
he should be marinating, but he's like flash frying. He's like, I can take care of this. Don't worry.
Especially because like the reason Kyle doesn't like him is because he declined his invitation. Like if you wanted to get
the other
Kyle,
thing.
accept his.
That's the other thing I love about this cast is, again, even though they have the capacity to like try to accept the more strategic elements, they are still so emotional. And I love
much.
it. I mean, you talk about like someone coming out of nowhere. Let's talk about Cassie waking up and choosing violence as well. We're like, last time we're saying, oh yeah, she's super sweet. No one's gonna get rid of her anytime soon. She's so unassuming. And she's gonna be the second person removed from the show because she just randomly decides to like take this pot shot at Miles for being like, well, good job, doofus. You AI engineer couldn't get who the AI was, but don't forget the fact that I also thought she was AI.
Yeah. Right? Like, remind me who you voted for in the thing.
Twice in the series of episodes that led to Cassie's demise, she had the same idea as Miles for Steffi, but then also did a portrait shadily about Miles, and then Miles did the same about her, and then she was like so incredulous that no, Miles did me wrong by making me seem like a snake. I was like, well, you kind of did the same thing. It was just a little smaller jab.
That's the thing, is that she's going to bemoan like, oh, Miles is the reason why I ended up finishing in last, and that's sort of the reason why QT and Kyle have this out to block her. But not only does she do that stuff, there's also at one point when like they're just in the circle chat talking about, how difficult it is, how should we rate? And Cassie comes out of nowhere being like, yeah, but remember, y'all, this is a game and we should consider it. And everyone's like, where did this come from? I know she's a little short, so maybe I just like wasn't looking at my eye level at this point, but she really is kind of like ducking herself off the knees here.
I could be wrong. It felt like I was like watching hints of a storyline that maybe just didn't come completely to fruition, but like it felt like they were trying to lead us down the path of like, okay, Miles and Cassie had this initial alliance, the blondes, whatever, and then QT came in, and she was kind of like, oh, Miles is pushing me aside for QT, and that felt to me like why her portrait of Miles was about him being like so obsessed with QT. And maybe the reasons why she was thinking she wanted to take pot shots at him. It never felt like it fully came to fruition, that storyline, so I don't know if that's actually the case, but that was what I was feeling, and I think that, like, in my own headcanon, that's sort of where the relationship fell apart. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing was just a series of bad decisions by really both parties. I mean,
Yeah.
like, Miles admitting to it was weird. I mean, it's just typical Miles, I guess. Like, he's just always just too honest while also being very strategic. But then what I really felt was the mistake by Miles is that he admitted to it, but then was just like, but it was just a joke.
Yeah, and
Like, no, it wasn't.
well, I don't know. I think he was actually sincere. Like, I think he legitimately thought, "Oh yeah, this is like a game where we all make fun of each other," right? But I don't know if that's the right thing to use as an insult. Like, make fun of Cassie for being short. Don't make fun of her for being a snake in the grass.
Well, I mean, the point was that it was retaliation against her comment,
Yeah.
in the circle chat when she was, like, poking fun at him for not getting the circle thing right. So, like, I mean, I guess it was maybe a joke in the sense that it was but, like, the reason he would not have made that joke if she hadn't made the comment,
Yeah.
right? And I think that, like, true honesty and vulnerability would have been to say, "You know what? I made the portrait, and here's why it really hurt me when you did that, and I retaliated, and that was immature of me." But to say, "Listen, it was me, I gotta be honest, but it was just a joke, bro."
Nah, yeah.
Like, that doesn't fly, like, that doesn't work.
No, I
And
think at that point you got a full farm for sympathy. Like, you got a full farm Cassie for all the wrong she did in the public chat and make her feel bad and then make her be like, "Oh, you know what? I kind of see why he did that now. It's still shady and he apologized so we can move on." I think that would have been the right move.
But the exact opposite happens, where instead she says, "Great, you will pillory yourself in the town square," where she
Yeah.
basically like coerces him into saying, "Yeah, and you're gonna say all this to everybody in Circle Chat, right? Because I don't know if you know this, you just sunk my game. Forget the fact that I was like near the bottom of the first rankings anyway. This is gonna be the thing that sends me home, Miles. So good luck with that on your conscience."
Right, and, like, the reason she ends up getting sent home, I mean, it's twofold. One is the conversation we'll talk about with Olivia and Kyle, but the other is that because she never, like, accepted the apology, like, QT was like, "I guess we should get rid of Cassie." Like, when Cassie is like, "Miles has something to say," it's like, "Wow, Cassie's still mad about this, like,
I
we
mean, and
can't work with her."
and honestly, like, does this not feel like a mom thing to do, right? Of like, you know, you did something wrong. Like, what do you have to say to your brother right now? I'm sorry, I hit the baseball through the window. Like, it felt like she was really letting him smell his own business that he did on the carpet. And it was so much fun to watch, but at the same time, again, this was not the Cassie whatsoever in the first 4 episodes. Maybe like the
No.
AI jacked into Cassie and infected her because she decides to just play this absolute aggro style for whatever reason that's going to lead firsthand to her demise.
Well, like, I do like, what I did like, and empathize with from Cassie's end was, like, she talks after the blocking about her situation with her former husband
Mm.
who had, like, cheated on her, and remember the whole catfish situation. I had completely forgotten that was her story. Um, and like, when Miles first apologizes, she's like, "Oh," and she's like almost going to accept it. And she's like, "No, I do this all the time. Like, I just let people apologize and I
Mhm.
forgive them, and then they do it again." And it's like, you know what? She's totally right, especially because I didn't feel like his apology was that genuine. And so, like, I I think what we ended up seeing, and the person that I could, like, feel for in that moment, is somebody who's struggling with their own like, ability to hold people accountable, as opposed to, like, just allowing people to walk all over them. And in this game, in any kind of social game, that's a line that you really have to be in control of and walk very carefully. And so when you're fighting with yourself about how you're able to emotionally respond, I think it's no wonder that, you might not land that, as well as you should.
So, can we talk about Cassie's last gasp of strategy here in the ratings, where
Oh my
she pulls
god.
a Missy
We'll
Elliott.
call it strategy. It's flip it and reverse it,
There we
but
go. Exactly. Where
at what
she
cost?
basically says, like, I don't want to be at the bottom again. So if I can try to push myself up a little bit, then I will then reverse my rankings. I will put Olivia down at the bottom, sink my only ally that could give me a chance of being an influencer and save me, versus propping up Kyle because I've never had a conversation with him one-on-one before. Again, I admire all these people for trying. I absolutely do. But this is a quite literal backwards way of thinking.
Yeah, this was so tough to watch. Not because I was, not because it was like I'm mad or anything. It's kind of what Taran said about the AI. I was just kind of disappointed because I was like, okay, yes, definitely think about doing your ranking strategically. Oh, wait. Are you ranking them in order of least talk to most talk to? Because that is not the move. Olivia is like one of the only people that's not going to be looking at you here. And that was tough, but also I feel like where she went wrong was her focus was I want to be an influencer, not I want to be safe. And by looking at I want to be an influencer, first of all, you have to be hoping that at least 3 or 4 other people are looking at you very highly, which if I'm Cassie, I'm looking around, I haven't talked to Kyle. Miles might not be loving me right now, called me a snake in the grass, and so on. I don't know how much I love my odds there. And at that point, Big J and Autumn were both in there too, right?
Yeah.
They don't know who I am, really. This was tough. This was tough to watch.
Yeah, that's reversing your own ratings, like, only would even have any kind of impact if your ratings were the consensus building ratings.
Yes.
In which case, you have managed to like, okay, well, I know that that Olivia is going to be everyone's number one, so I'm going to put her last.
Exactly.
And then that will drop her a little bit. The problem with that is that if it is the house consensus ratings, you're not going to make enough of an impact for it to matter, probably.
Yeah.
It's like there's never a reason to do this. Like, you could maybe make the argument that if you really feel like 1 or 2 specific people are people that you really like, say you are a big Kyle fan. Let's say she did have a great relationship with Kyle. And you want to put him high because of that, but a lot of people are putting Kyle high because he's very popular. You could say, you know what, I feel pretty safe, and I think I might be close to the influencer spot. So I'm actually going to put Kyle on the bottom, tank him, and prevent him from being an influencer, and everything else stays the same. But maybe just Kyle will drop, and then that will maybe propel me into the influencer spot. There's a chance that might work, maybe. But it's very risky because there's probably a reason you like Kyle. Because if Kyle is an influencer, you're safe. It's better to be saved by other influencers than be an influencer yourself, which is why Lauren is cheering every time that she's not an influencer.
Yeah.
So like, even if that strategy could maybe theoretically work, you still shouldn't do it. It's still not something you should want to do.
What do you guys think about now listen, Brandon is no Max, but he says that usually when it comes to deciding who to block in the circle, they look to like the bottom 2 people in the ratings. Do you feel like that's something that usually holds, that it's this idea of, because this is also like, correct me if I'm wrong, this is like the first actual blocking that we're doing, right?
Yeah.
Because the first one was the AI thing. And so it is a little bit of a delayed start. Do you think that the majority of the time people are just usually going to say, well, listen, if the vast majority of the people rated them low, that means that it's not going to cause that big of a wave and get me in trouble next time, so I'll just chop them off.
That's the thing about the circle is it's all about posturing. It's all about like social standing, right? And that's kind of like what's interesting about the game of it. And so like, if you are at the bottom of the ratings, that just gives people the excuse, the reason, as Vanessa Rousseau might say, to target you. Like, because it's usually not just one person, usually 2 people that have to agree. And if those 2 people don't agree, then it comes down to who has a better argument. And a great argument is this person was rated lower, or this person was actively coming for me. Just a reason that they can use so that they can win an argument. And even if it is a sole influencer, you have to come back and explain yourself to the rest of the house. And so if you block somebody who's at low in the ratings, then your explanation is this wasn't just me or us. This was everyone. Everyone collectively decided that this person was the lowest. I didn't go against consensus. This wasn't my move. This was everyone's move. Um, and so there's, I think, a lot of like direction that can go for that to happen. And you will often see that like a low rated player who is saved by the influencers because they actually like the person, you kind of have to explain yourself like, oh man, I'm
Yeah.
really sticking my neck out to save this person. Even though theoretically, if you like remove that social component from it, if you just look at like the strategy and the pieces, it's like, why would I ever take somebody out who I'm connected to that's low rating? Why wouldn't I take out the highest rated enemy of mine every time? Because it comes down to the only reason you're in this spot is because of that social positioning. And so maintaining the right narrative is super important.
Right. It's
Yeah,
interesting, yeah, comparing that to like Big Brother, right? Where it's like, yeah, you could be in bad social standing, but you can win a challenge by your own merit and get that power.
Right.
This is doing sort of like coconut chop every single challenge on Survivor to determine the immunity winner.
yeah, and I mean, you're talking about Big Brother. Sometimes people do the boring thing, not the most fun thing, but it's like, yep, House kind of wants the two of you up. I'm gonna throw both of you up. One of you goes whatever. And with this, I really think there's two sides of the coin. One is exactly everything Taran pointed out here. And you kind of see this because in the bottom you did have Cassie, but then Paul is also down there. But Paul is so clearly in the camp of Kyle and QT. You're never going to get rid of him because, first of all, he is an ally of mine that I'm never a threat of getting beat by in the influencer spot because clearly he's not doing as well as I am. So let me keep him there. He'll keep giving me high rankings. I can keep doing better. And then the second part for me is if you take out a third placer or fourth placer and you were kind of close to them or even had some kind of a connection, the goodbye message can screw you because they also clearly are good with enough people that they're third or they're fourth, and that could really tank you as well later on. Because and this is the hardest part of the circle is we've seen different iterations. We've seen people be first like throughout the season and then get to the final ranking and everyone's hitting them with fifth because they don't want this person to win. But you've also seen someone who can just be that good and just keep getting first all the way through. So getting that power is kind of, to me, if I was playing, where I'm going to overthink the hell out of it. So much so that I will end up doing what they did and just go with the last place finisher because this is the easy thing to do.
I mean, I think the optimal strategy for an alliance on the circle, if we tried to boil it down to something super, super simple,
Mhm.
is to do roughly what Miles did with Olivia when they were ride or dies, which is let's all collectively agree to tank one person at the
Mhm.
bottom of our ratings and prop one person up at the top of our ratings. Because no matter how big the alliance is, like, even if you are in a minority, if you organize correctly and everyone puts the same person at the top and the same person at the bottom, then you have a great shot of getting at least that one person into an influencer spot. And then when they are in the influencer spot, they have a great argument to take out the person
Yep.
you tanked.
Exactly. I'm like,
Well,
oh, well, yeah. If
the
you take
house consensus was that they were the least popular, even though it
Mhm.
was just a coordinated effort to make it seem so.
Well,
Or even the argument of, "Hey, I'm QT, so and so. If you keep this person, Kyle's has your back, Miles has your back. I can guarantee it. I'll put in a good word for you."
also on top of all that, with the way the circle is set up, we get a lot of this twist where the last place finisher is getting auto blocked. So if you can consensus throw someone in seventh no matter what, at the very least you'll rest easy knowing that if that twist comes up, it ain't your ass.
Yeah. So, should we talk about the ride or dies?
Yeah,
Yes,
I mean, we'll
bestie
definitely.
besties, if you
Yeah,
will.
for example, before we get into that sort of a reminder of those days gone by, I mean, we could just sort of talk about briefly, because again, this is the first blocking. As much as I've been lauding QT for just, again, the excellent position she was in, did not surprise me whatsoever that she was, one of the first outright influencers here. I would say obviously not her ideal outcome. I think in a perfect world, she would want Olivia blocked, because
Yeah.
I do think that Cassie, like, knowing Cassie and knowing Brandon, I think that if Brandon was the one in the eliminated situation, I don't think he would have been impugning QT as much as Cassie was, where it seemed like, and again, maybe this is something we're not witnessing. It literally did seem like she was like glomming onto this one chat that they had about hashtag girl gang and being like, but I was in an alliance with QT and she betrayed me. I can't believe this. Look at this turncoat.
Well, so this was a little bit of a confusing thing because it seemed as though Cassie was saying there was like an official alliance between her, QT, and Miles that like which would make sense. Like Miles bringing QT in on the blonde alliance essentially, and that the three of them might have like a locked in trio. I could be wrong. I don't remember ever seeing that on screen.
Same.
Yeah.
But it makes sense that it would have existed, and that Cassie would have felt particularly betrayed by them, and maybe even falling into my headcanon of like, oh well, he's bringing QT into the whole thing, and he likes her more than he likes me, and he's going to be more loyal to her than he is to me, and starting to feel some type of way about that. But yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately this comes down to Olivia, Lauren, or Cassie. And what another thing that confused me is that QT's the first person to say, "Oh, look at Lauren, who just lost Steffi, who just lost Max. She's completely alone. She needs somebody. I want to be that somebody." Cut to Olivia initiating a chat with Lauren. QT, I don't think ever even talks to Lauren in the whole batch of episodes. And it was just like, where did that go? Like, why did
Well, there had to have been some kind of conversation there because I feel like if there wasn't, we'd see way more of an outrage from QT potentially to want to get Lauren out or to look at Lauren because I want to give QT her flowers because she
Okay,
nailed
Miles.
the Okay, relax. I'm not doing a rap here. Okay. She nailed the frame job of Olivia with
So
the
good.
portrait, like all the way from portrait to then private chat to who do you think it is? Oh, you think it's Olivia? Yeah, that's kind of shady. Literally, it all comes down, y'all, to this one conversation that Olivia has with Kyle that I truly think saves it because otherwise we'd be sitting here talking about how QT got the exact person she needed out in one fell swoop.
But
Well, okay. Hold on though. Here's my thing.
Yes.
Famously, I am against trying to frame people in the games and being mean in the games in general. I think you should cop out, you should be nice, you should make it obvious that it was you that was nice. I think that's almost always the call.
Mhm.
And I still kind of think that like even this successful frame job, I do feel like it still kind of led to the situation where, like, I don't know if Olivia initiates that conversation with Kyle, if she doesn't feel like, "Oh, I just got framed for the painting. I need to talk to him to make
mm,
sure we're cool."
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And so I still just I agree. I think QT probably does it better than we've seen anybody really do it before. But I think just in general, I'm still just like, how did it really help their relation? If it was possible to frame this person successfully in the way that you did, then the relationship is already shaky enough that it probably didn't need to happen in the first place.
You're not wrong because I truly think as of right now, all that what that painting ended up doing, because that combined with Cassie's conversation with Brandon, combined with the feeling now that Brandon has towards Miles and QT, that's gotta put Kyle in the best spot of the Tres Fuego,
yeah.
just by default, which is great for Kyle.
No, I think Kyle is in a very good spot.
Yeah.
Very, very good spot where
Well,
well, I
Until
was
we
just
get to
cliffhanger.
the
we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, he might end up unfortunately walking out the door alongside his unfortunate, like very reluctant bro Paul. But I do think all that twist aside, this is that guy who's in that perfect position of like that you always want to be in a social strategy game, which is like at the forefront of a lot of decision making, well ensconced within an alliance, making great one-on-one relationships, but nobody's looking at Kyle specifically as like this guy's making the decisions. He's got to go. Now, maybe it's due to his perception of sort of being this jockey guy that they're not thinking like, oh, yeah, the other two are really the ones that are talking and making the decisions. But I think that Kyle is maybe the safest out of the three. I will also, though, let's continue to give flowers out. I'm going to give massive flowers to Brandon. And it's so interesting that we're talking about like, why wasn't QT talking with Lord? It felt like for some reason we got this disproportionate amount of conversations that Brandon was starting. Like
Mhm.
it felt we've had about 5 or 6 chats in this batch that Brandon was the one messaging
with 5 or 6
somebody.
different people, like with
Yeah.
everybody.
So,
Yeah.
like and I don't know, like, I guess a lot were cut out. I know that when it comes to the circle, you have to, like, basically put a wish list in of who you wanna talk to that day, and maybe they're just showing the pertinent ones, but that was really interesting. But, again, for somebody who I think to his point was kind of brought in and initially perceived as, like, this big character, the sidekick, if you will. Like, I think he is really starting to catch on with the game. I don't think he's as explicitly heady as a QT or a Jordan, but I do think the way that he's been able to, again, use his own information and his own perception to make himself feel good to other people obviously pays off in spades here.
Yeah, I mean, Brandon slash Olivia, I think that Olivia as a player is more in the old school style of circle strategy,
Yes.
which is try to make genuine connections to people and generally be pretty nice and target people that are mean and strategic. And that that paid off in the Cassie blocking because it would have been Olivia. Might not have worked super well in the next one if not for the ride or die twist, but
Yeah.
you know what? The ride or die twist happened and Olivia adapted.
I agree. Yeah.
And I think that what's super interesting is that we're seeing Olivia as theoretically this old school kind of circle player who then had to change into a more new school. Like she had to play the way that Miles was playing, that everyone else is playing, and watching her struggle with that, I thought was so fun.
Yeah.
So I actually I thought this was a good twist. I thought that it worked really well.
I mean, I might go so far as to say, like, I think Brandon and QT are like my two favorite people this season. Because I also think Brandon is so much fun in that, like, clearly he has a soft heart, and like him opening up about his father, like, it broke me when he read Kyle's message of like hashtag you are special, and like, not to read too much into it, but my assumption is that Brandon is someone that I think has dealt with a lot of self-image and self-respect issues, and I think even just like seeing that validation through the guise of this perverted game that is the circle, like, meant so much to him. But I really also like the fact that, like, he's also pretty shady at the same time. Like, I
Oh, yeah.
love the vindictiveness and the sass that he will give out to people when he's just like, F you, Miles, what the hell are you talking about? And then to your point, Taran, the delicious story beat now of, okay, these two now have to work together and come to like this mutually assured destruction where Brandon basically feels like he's making a deal with the devil.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very fascinating twist. I liked it quite a bit. What I don't know about though is the way we paired them up with this quiz of questions. Because some of these questions, you know how like we get on the pod and we're like, all right, let's ask each other these questions. I don't think I want to discuss some of these questions with the two of you. I don't think we need to open them.
Well, now we have to.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Mike, take
Yeah.
it away. This is your forte.
All right. Well, so what was the first one? I didn't write them down. It was like, would you rather fight 500 chickens or one bear?
Right, which that one to me felt easy, but then it was 50-50. Chickens, right? It's 500 chickens.
I mean, I sort of deflect.
Listen,
to
I watched The
Autumn's-
Revenant. I'm good. There.
My life's fine.
That's true. I would deflect to Autumn's perspective though, when she's like, chickens can be son of a bitches, and like, if you want to get swarmed by them, good luck.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be super annoying, but I won't be dead.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like 500 is a big number, all things considered, but
500 chickens can't all attack me at once. Only like 10 of them can attack me at once.
Right. I mean,
It's
that's
just
my
10 at a
assumption.
time.
Yeah, a full bear, it ain't happening.
Yeah.
There's no world. Well, Paul's reason was who would want to pick chickens? Bear is way cooler. I was like, it's not to pose next to, you're fighting them.
I'm obsessed with Caress always taking the exact opposite answer to everything Caress has ever faced in the game of Circle.
That's not the question I was alluding to, though. That's a good question. It's the would you rather your parents watch your sex tape or you watch theirs that I'm like, so this decided someone's fate in the game. The answer to this question,
well, it was
really.
Here's the thing. It was find your sex tape. It wasn't even watch.
Mhm.
So I
like the
immediately
implication.
recognized the loophole of, well, I can find it. I don't have to watch it.
Yeah.
So if I find
Yeah.
it,
Just
then
take
I'm
the
in
ring.
control of the fact that nobody has to
Yeah.
watch anything.
Yeah. No, the 100% the move is that what you just answered. Easily.
Yeah.
So, I don't know,
And
maybe you
then
assuming that your parents are enough able to resist temptation that they also will find it and not watch it. Unless
but
you
that doesn't
title
have
it
to
something
be.
but
like,
they'll know it exists. I don't like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Because I can like never let them know that I found it, but I don't know if they can look at me the same way, and I'm not ready for
for
that.
me, I think it depends on like what's the aspect ratio. You know, what are the special features? Am I putting forward a high quality product?
What angles?
Yeah, is this the
Exactly.
director's cut? Like, what do you mean aspect ratio?
Something's cut.
Does it? Oh God, does it come with 3D glasses?
Well, a lot of things will be popping out.
Well, there was one of the other ones was crap. Like, would you want your Google search history
Oh yeah,
or
or your photos.
or your photos?
phone
Yeah.
photos. Yeah. Take my phone photos. It's all screenshots of memes and selfies.
It's all like scally gifs. Great,
Yeah.
enjoy them.
Yeah, it's good content for your Twitter amusement.
Yeah, I mean, my instinct was like, I don't think I've Googled anything that weird. But then I was like, I also don't have like
It's boring. My
if
Google
people want to see
search.
progress photos of me, like,
No.
Like, I guess that's probably the
Yeah.
worst. But then I was like, but I have like not like compromising pictures, but I also like I have pictures of like friends and family that like I would feel like I don't want to release their photos. So then I was
Right.
like, so then I kind of went back to Google. I was like, yeah, maybe I just do Google then. And so I kind of went back and forth. But if it was just me, I easily photos. I think is
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Though again, I think we are not necessarily the types of people that are being cast on the show where it's like, oh shit, I do not want people to see those pictures. Like, absolutely not. They're not seeing the light of day.
Listen. Here's the thing: if you don't want people to see pictures, don't take the picture.
Yeah.
Now, you know what? I say that take as many pictures as you want. That's you have a right to privacy.
Exactly.
I think people go too far. I think like, if your pictures get leaked, that's actually a terrible thing. And you are not
100%, no matter what the
taking those
photos.
pictures.
Yeah.
But so yeah, so I guess where are we at? I guess
Oh,
I
if we
think
talk
Mike
about
and
people,
Pooya probably were the closest.
yeah, exactly. So people who were speaking of people that were coerced into odd film situations, let's talk about Ride or Dies here. So like I to your point, Taran, I really enjoyed the twist. To Puya's also point, like I don't know. Oh, how convenient it is that Kyle and Paul happen to be together. Oh no, Olivia is going verbally and explicitly after Miles. I guess they have to work together. That like you have to imagine the fingers on the scale a bit. But
No, because Mike, if the finger was on the scale, Miles and Big J would be a pair, and I would have loved that. That
Yeah,
would have been
I mean,
fun.
also like I don't think they needed the ruse. Like they could have easily just said we're randomly pairing you up and then put their finger on the scale there.
that being
So I
said,
mean, yeah, go ahead.
I love the games overall. I
Yeah.
think that, like the games this season again, people might want to watch for like the fluffy sort of non sequitur stuff, but even in this example, I'm like, oh, we've been so good with the games. We just had the portrait stuff. Now we're going back to like random would you rather's. To have it actually show a purpose
Yeah.
took me by surprise as much as the contestants.
Exactly, and that's why I feel like I think that this was a great way to do it because it. I will admit, at first I was like, why are we just doing percentages? Like this is kind of lame. It was half of them were 50-50. And I was like, this did not feel like it went anywhere. But then it was like, no, this actually mattered. Your answers matter. And now you are in different and I thought the pairings worked out great. QT with Big J was great.
Yes.
Miles with Olivia, obviously fantastic. And then you do also have representation of like actual allies being pairs in Kyle and Paul, which also kind of worked out great. And so and then the absolute disaster of Lauren and Autumn.
Yeah, where it was like on paper, okay, this pair is the one that we probably will focus the least on. They're two pretty kind, well-natured, mild-mannered souls. Let's focus on all the other mess going on with Miles and Olivia, but they do the exact opposite trajectory as Miles and Olivia. They wind up with where Miles and Olivia start by the whole beginning of this charade. And honestly, it's so interesting that last week, I think to your point, Taryn, about sort of like the evolution of this season, that I think people like Lauren and people like Miles do a really good job in this old era of the circle of like, again, just be really likable, try to present yourself as genuine and authentic to everybody, and you'll do pretty well. And I think we're seeing over the course of these 4 episodes that like both of them end up kind of falling on the thing that really propped them both up in the first 4 episodes, where the complaint across the board is going to be like, nobody knows where Lauren stands because everything she answers in a neutral, positive statement, to the point where she kind of does a bit of the people-pleasing answer in saying, yes, my ride or die partner is the most likely to, what was it, farm for likes. And Autumn is just crushed is an understatement. This woman is livid.
Well, it's because she does that, and then the next 2 people were like, let's do that. Let's all tank Autumn. Let's go Autumn. Let's make it clear who we're going after. And Autumn, who we've not really talked about yet, has come in late, doesn't really have connections. The first person she talks to is Paul, who is very GameBot-esque with all the answers.
Big
so much
mistake.
so,
Big
horrible.
mistake. Oh my God. Imagine
Let's talk about
Caress and Q in a conversation together.
Seriously. I will say, I did see the original, the actual Paul, who is TikTok famous. He was on my For You page. I was just scrolling, and he was reacting to her playing him and just reacting, and it was hilarious. He is not with how she's portraying him at all.
Well, the way she's portraying him is like, well, Paul would be like, I need a dark side here. Like, Paul would make the bad choice. Paul would fight a bear.
Speaking of people behind the avatar, have you all seen that like the guy who was used as the photo for Max has now become more public facing? I believe he's on Cameo now.
Well, I did see that. I saw he also landed on my For You page because he was like, well, my photos were used for the AI person on the Circle. Is
this why Hollywood was on strike, by the way? Is this what they were trying to prevent?
Well, listen, I don't know this Max the original, I'll call him, but he was clearly trying to farm interactions because he was like, I'll drop the tea tomorrow. And then I checked the other TikTok and it was a part 2, but no answer. So I looked through the comments, and the comments, someone pointed out that when you apply for the Circle, you basically agree to consent that if they don't select you, they can still use your photos for another contestant or for a catfish. So I'm assuming that's what happened here, but I didn't get the full answer.
Listen, this guy, he's just ahead of the curve on this whole thing. He's already making alliances with AI. Like,
Yeah.
when they take over, he's going to be like, hey, who lent you some pictures on the Circle? That was me. I did that.
Is he going full Kyle Moore here? Is he like, last time they're going to think it was me, but
no.
actually I'm the real
put him
Max.
on the show?
Well, that's what happened with Elise's husband, right? With Trevor, was like he was catfish that first time, and then he was actually playing not as himself, but he actually became a player a couple seasons later.
Yeah, I think he would have needed Max to stay in a little longer to make that happen. But so okay, we have the ride or dies. I think immediately Miles and Olivia have the best strategy. We've talked about that already. I mean, not only deciding that they're going to rate each other highest, that's obvious, but coordinating the who are we ranking lowest. And quite frankly, they probably should have coordinated even more to be safe, but maybe they weren't allowed to. Who knows?
Yeah. What did you make about, because again, we sort of compared this to like a tethered twist from Sequester. What did you make of the idea that seemingly they were not allowed to tell anybody who their ride or die is, even through like through it all? I don't know when this twist will end, but like
loved it because they were still trying to, like, especially with this cast, they were trying to detective it out, which I did enjoy hearing them speculate. Okay, so he clearly brought up these 2 people. One of them is most likely going to be the pair. I like that a lot, actually. And they gave them enough, like, especially with the most likely, least likely, you could have tried to figure out people through that as well. So that part of me was tickled. I like the detective work that they had to put in.
I do think it gets tricky as to like what qualifies telling.
Right. It's the whole Mike Boogie coup d'etat thing, right?
It's kind of like the traitors, where you can't say this person's a traitor with me, but you can accuse them and you can tell people you're suspicious of them. just fine.
But I think they kind of circumvented that with the most likely, least likely game because, and I think some of the players recognize this, that game was strictly a who's your ride or die game.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it just that's how a lot of them chose to play it, and it's how all of them should have played it. That game was, here's somebody that is not connected to me that I'm willing to put low. That's a safe person from my perspective. And here's the person you should all not rank low or eliminate because I will have to go with them. It's exactly what Miles did. Like when Miles puts Olivia in the most likely or whatever the good position and Autumn in the bad position, he is very clearly telling all of his allies, yeah, Olivia, the person who is like most at my throat, keep her safe this time.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people were very clearly fine to let Autumn go. Nobody's putting Autumn down if they're her if she's their ride or die. Unless you're Lauren. But nobody in the alliance would have put Autumn down if she was their ride or die.
Well,
so Autumn was a safe bet.
I will say I did also like that very clearly Kyle just did not want Paul to let people know that he's attached to
Kyle
to
begging Paul because
Yeah.
Paul was like the first to go, and the scenario was which players are most and least likely to ditch their friends for a date. And Chris is like, "Oh, I can't wait to slam Miles for the update time." But Kyle's like, "I am begging you, do not put me in even more shit by doing your stupid Paul thing and slamming Miles when we're in an alliance with him." To your point, Taran, I think the essential part of the strategy that works so well for Miles and Olivia is not necessarily that we're going to rate each other number one, but bringing up a collusion of who to rate low. Because that's the thing with the ride or die twist, the number ones basically all cancel each other out, right? Because the
100%.
assumption is you're going to pick your ride or die for number one because the incentive is if they're in the bottom, you're up for elimination. And so basically that all nils. And it all comes down to everything else, 2 through 7, basically. And so then you have to be really strategic more so about, okay, that one's out of the way. Let's try to make a concerted effort to try to push someone else up, or more importantly, I think, push somebody else down. And again, I'd love to see this story unfold where, Miles and Olivia just come to this very reluctant agreement where they're like, all right, we'll rate each other number one. And Miles is like, and we need a sacrifice. We need a patsy. And Olivia's like, I guess Autumn. And it's interesting, Taran, that you bring up that, like, yes, Lauren did get the ball rolling, but I do think Olivia also dodged another bullet here where, like, I think she was next to go and she would have gone along with the plan either way and would have said Autumn would have been the least likely to, which players are most and least likely to stab someone in the back. And I think that, listen, Autumn's going to take it the wrong way either way, but I think that between that and the fact that Olivia's going to immediately follow up and own up to it and apologize, it could have been so much worse for her, like we saw with Lauren.
And that was one of my favorite conversations of the batch of episodes, which is that, Olivia genuinely feels awful for doing this, genuinely feels like I have just contributed to a thing that has happened to me in the past. And I hate this. It was what I had to do for the strategy. Because again, like Olivia's being forced to play the game in a way that she doesn't want to play. And reaches out to Autumn and has this genuine apology. And Autumn's like, nah, I don't believe this. This is and it was so interesting because like, yeah, like Autumn's totally right to feel that way because it's similar to the Cassie thing. It's like, this apology is nonsense. You just did it. What do you mean you're sorry about it? Like, but it was a specific situation where like I don't think she would have done it in any other spot, and she can't even explain why she did it. And so it was interesting.
And it's a good bonding moment for them because when we get to the end of the episode, Autumn ends up being just fine. And
wild.
Which is,
here's the thing.
I still have no clue how that happened. Paul must have done so much other stuff.
So here's the thing. First of all, if you're out there, if you're listening, please, can we somehow get the information, the percentages, the votes? I need these. I need, I want the statistics. I would love to see that. I watched the episodes twice. So the second time I watched them, Paul, despite all the hints being Autumn, votes Lauren last.
That was the mistake.
Yeah. So I feel like no world, Autumn should have 100% been last there. And I think that could have helped them. Again, this is why I want the stats. I don't know how close it was, but from where I'm standing, I feel like this had to have been a close one, in my opinion.
I agree. I think it had to have been close, and I think it would not surprise me at all if the nail in the coffin for Paul was that despite the hints, despite the fact that like it doesn't like what are you doing putting Lauren at the bottom? What is that for?
After they had a one-on-one, Taran.
Yeah, but that's the other thing, right? Because again, that is what I love so much about Caress, which is like, I got you, girl. Don't worry. You stupid idiot. I can't wait to get rid of you immediately. Not realizing that Paul kind of screws himself in the process. I think something else that happens as well is Autumn probably saved her own butt as well by rating Paul last too. And granted, they were the pair that was the least on the same page, but for what it's worth, Lauren does rate Paul second to last. And so maybe it's just by like both of these pairs, this pair somehow being on the same wavelength this one time and rating him low.
Well, no, I think this was just another great call by Autumn in terms of like how she read this, because she chose Paul to talk to, and then Paul dropped all the tea on her, and she was able to read straight through. Like, this guy's no good. Like, I don't like the way that he talked about people, and she decides to take a big risk, which is to expose Paul to Lauren, who is like, wow, I can't believe he called me two-faced or whatever it was that he called her. Betrayer, backstabber, I think it was. And so, you know, getting that read on Paul, rating him low herself, sharing that information with Lauren, who then is now inoculated to Paul attempting to trick her into rating him a little higher, makes Lauren rate him low. Autumn rates him low because of the read she gets on him. And without that, I think Autumn's gone. I think that was just a great read and a great risk call to take in terms of you know, going in that direction.
Would Autumn be gone though? Because we'll get into this. I think they obviously don't know it at the time, but if Autumn and Lauren were in that stay sacrifice twist, bye Lauren. I think Lauren is so guilt-ridden by what happened in that game that I think there's a very fair shot that Lauren is like, you know what? It's good. You take it. You keep going. I'm sorry I sunk your game because I said you were least likely to do something.
Well, they can't talk though, so it would be a double out, and if it works the way you're saying.
Well, no,
I
would say that Autumn would say stay and Lauren would say sacrifice, because Autumn can go for broke. Autumn's like, I don't care. I'm gone either way.
I don't know that Lauren would do that though. I think Lauren's a very nice person. I think it's part of why she's struggling in the circle. But like, I think she's a gamer too. Like, she's being nice as part of her game. There's a reason why she put Autumn in that spot in the first place, right? Like, I think that that Lauren would really want to stay, and would, you know, if they could talk, it would be one thing. But like, I think she'd hope like, hey, Autumn's the one that sunk. I wasn't last, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
I think it's tough because Lauren, again, she has these really, she's sort of the opposite of Jordan, where like she has the capital, like she has accrued a lot of stuff from just being a really personable person, which is an odd phrase to say, and like has gotten a lot of great vibes from people. But it seems like she has almost like investment paralysis, where it seems like every time she feels some way, she's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. We saw that with, oh, okay, I think I trust Steffi, but everyone else is saying that they don't trust Steffi. I'm not sure how I feel about this. Oh, I think that I'm okay saying Autumn here because we just had this conversation. Wait, Autumn feels bad about it. And it's, again, it's really interesting considering that that's not the Lauren I necessarily saw in the first 4 episodes. I agree with you, Taran, that I don't think she's like completely opposite end of the spectrum of just like, no, I'm only here for vibes. I'm going to work with the people that like I feel best about and not incorporate strategy into it whatsoever. But I would say out of these current people that we have in the cast, I think she is one of the people that feels the most uncomfortable being explicitly strategic.
I think it's a combination of this got a little harder than I think what she thought it would be when she first got in, is the read I have on it. The second thing is, if she was already feeling a little iffy about some of the movements and the actions, I think it became a lot harder once she, again, loses her 2 allies immediately. One of them being AI, that she kind of went 100% in with Max. And now she's like, I don't know what I can do. Like, I've touched the stove once. I don't know if I want to do that again. That and like, I think the shady stuff being maybe harder than what she thought it would be initially.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, to your point about what happened with Paul and Autumn, it also is really interesting to me comparing like what happens with Lauren and Max, and to a certain point for a little while, what happens with Olivia and QT, to both Jordan and Autumn, who I think really well timed on the producer's part to like bring these two in as the last two, because then they're coming in being like, great, here's the olive branch. I'm just gonna strip it for all the olives and then toss the branch back, basically, of like, great, you talked to me, you gave me information that maybe I can use, but also at the same time, I know that you're somebody that can just spill every piece of information to me. That makes you actually very unvaluable to my game.
Yeah. So ultimately, it does land on, we assume, I think we can safely assume, Paul, as
Yeah.
the lowest rated player. And that means that him and Kyle are now uh in danger of being blocked, something along those lines. And I think that like you could predict this was gonna happen because, even though I skipped most of the previews, the one thing I saw was something about, like, sacrifice. And I was like, "Okay, so probably not both of them are gonna go, or there's something in it that's gonna happen." I was not surprised at all. I wish I hadn't watched the preview. I probably would have been a lot more surprised. But there's another twist here, which is that one of them can choose to sacrifice themselves for the other, but it's not even that simple. They don't even know what the other person chose. If they both choose to sacrifice, then they both still lose. And if they both choose to stay, then they both lose. The only way for one of them to stay in the game is if one of them and only one of them chooses to sacrifice without being able to communicate with each other. And
Yeah.
this is again where posturing comes in, right?
Yep.
Because it's pretty clear to both of them that Paul is the one that tanked their rating. And
Yeah.
so the only kind of communication they can do is already in their heads of like, well, there's no way Kyle expects to be the one to have to sacrifice, right? Which means the decision kind of comes down to Paul, you would assume. And is Paul going to take that hit? Now they, when Paul was going through the ratings, it was like, I would cry if I was the reason why Kyle got blocked. That seemed to potentially imply that like that could be what's coming up. But then, once faced with the decision, it's like, what do you mean? I can sacrifice? Like, because it's like, what if it has to run through your head. Like, what if I do? And then Kyle did. Like, you
Yeah.
never really know.
Right. And so it is this idea where if you look again at the permutations, like if you were the bottommost finisher, unless you are overwhelmed with guilt, I think it is in your most advantageous position to always stay. Because at the very worst, you're going out and you were gonna go out anyway. But if you do hit stay and your partner somehow hits sacrifice, congratulations, you somehow stayed in the game despite being dragged in. And so I do think that, again, someone like Autumn may have done that. To your point, Taran, I'm not sure. Now, Caress is the most hardcore, like, game-only person of the season. But yeah, I don't know about those little cracks we got in the armor of, like, her feeling a certain way about tanking Kyle's game here.
I think if Paul is paired up with anybody else, this isn't a conversation we're having. You're
Mm,
hitting stay, you don't care. You go out, whatever. I think it's a combination of Paul and Kyle have been working together from day dot. Paul has clearly watched Kyle be on the mountaintop, be ranked high. And I think Paul 100% knows I'm the reason we're in the bottom. And in watching it again, that language came up. So to me, I feel like as much as Caress wants to stay in the game, and that's been very evident, I think she's going to tap out. I think she's just good because I think ultimately, like you said, Mike, this is kind of like in that one round of Squid Game where people were like, I don't want to be the star, the umbrella shape. So we're both going to go out. I don't care. I feel like if I'm there with somebody that haven't been working with, I'm not really allies with, and I could help my friends if they go with me, sure. Then I'm going to sacrifice. I'm going to hit stay. If you hit stay, we both go out. But I think in this situation, I just do not think that Paul's going to let Kyle go out with them. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting about the choice is that as an individual choice, there is 0 game upside to saying sacrifice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nothing.
that's the
It's
thing.
not a prisoner's dilemma because
No.
there's nothing to gain.
So would you prefer then from that perspective if this was the way it's been branded, or if this was closer to like the golden balls, the friend or foe, you're actually choosing to sacrifice the other person? If it's like, okay, you can choose between either like you both stay in the game or you can eliminate your ride or die right now.
I think it's fine the way it is, because of the concept of the twist. It's ride or die. You're supposed to be allies. Is one of you or both of you are you willing to sacrifice yourself? And I think it's always supposed to land on the person that came in last. I think it's
Mm,
always supposed to be like, you ruined it for your ride or die. Are you willing to own that and sacrifice yourself so that they can stay, or are you going to drag them down with you? And that's a question that like hits deep beyond just the game, because if you're in that spot, for the most part, like 98%, I've already lost.
Yeah.
mhm.
So the question is, does the 2% chance, is that enough for me to drag my ride or die down with me? And yeah, unless it's an actual duo that's working together, that's probably a little less interesting. But at the very least, these are people that just worked together for the last, day or two,
Yeah.
who plotted together, who, tried to make this work together. And I could absolutely still see, some pairs, some players making that call. And the thing is, if they don't make the call, if they do choose to stay, that's still compelling.
Yeah.
It's just what was originally promised to us anyway. And so I think it just worked well. And what I liked is that it added a new element to how they had to play this round. Um, Again, like the typical format of the circle can feel a little stale sometimes. And adding in this thing, I think is great. I've always been an advocate for the circle, because it's not Big Brother. uh, to throw in wrenches, just all kinds of wrenches. You have so much room to play in this format, and so something like this, I think it played out exactly how, like, this was best case scenario for them between the Miles and Olivia pairing, and then the Paul and Kyle choice. Now, like, this is exactly what you want from this twist. Apart from the fact that they ruined it all with a cliffhanger.
Well, I mean, the
Classic.
circle's gonna circle. I mean, might I be so forward as to say, like, in this season of the circle, the AI twist is the sizzle, but the ride or dies is the stake of like actually having more strategic story based merit.
I mean, I think that the AI was the star of the first batch, and the Ride or Dies was the star of the second batch, and we'll see what happens with the third batch.
Which is
Um,
funny because Ride or Dies doesn't come in until like middle of episode 7. So it's like
I
an
will,
hour
I will
arc.
say, until Ride or Dies came in to play, I was feeling like, man, we lost Max, and now it's feeling back to like old Circle, and I was kind of ready to come into this podcast and be like, you know what, I'm not as high on the season anymore, and
Hmm.
then they brought in Ride or Dies, and I was like, "All right, I'm back. I'm back." And then they cliffhangered it again. And
Yeah.
I just need to rant about the cliffhanger because it's so stupid. It's just like I don't care about this decision anymore. I'm going to watch this a week from now and I'm going to be like, "What was happening?" "Oh, right. The decision between, oh, and it just happened?" "Okay." Whereas when I was watching it at the time, I was like, "Oh my god, what are they gonna do?" And I was I don't know. This is emotional. This is thrilling in that moment. And I was so ready for it. And it's just what it does when they do this consistently is it makes me feel like I'm watching this show wrong.
Mm,
It's making me feel like I should not be watching this show as it airs. I should wait until all the episodes are out so I can enjoy it the way that it should be enjoyed. Because it sucks to have to watch it this way. This big moment has been ruined for anyone
Right.
that has to wait a week for the resolution, in my
Unlike
opinion, at least.
I mean, and the thing is, Taran, when we talk about like weekly episodic TV, like your Lost, your Prison Breaks back in the day, that makes sense because it's one episode a week. It's 42 minutes, and like they got to leave you with like, ooh, what's going to happen? Here, we're given 4 episodes, and obviously, I think 99% of us are watching them back to back to back to back to back. So then, to have the final episode give you the biggest cliffhanger, we're going to be left with this. And then the screen comes on because obviously it won't hit you with the next episode automatically anymore. It's like, watch this other show. It's like, I don't want to watch that. Right now, all I want to know is what happens. Do they split or steal? Are they both gone? Am I going to have to sit here be sad about Kyle? You know what's going to suck is if I have to wait a week only to be like, so Kyle's gone. Like, damn it.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is like, you bring up Lost, but I feel like those other types of shows, it wasn't necessarily about cliffhangers. It was always building to a crescendo. Like there always was a quite literal final note. Yes, you do have Jack and Locke looking down the hatch at the end of season 1, but like that's the vast minority of the time. Usually it'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. And then you sit with it for a week and then we get the follow up. And it's tough because then you also have to make the assumption, right, that we did with Steffi of like, okay, well, it's probably Steffi then, because they're just going to like kind of write off the most simplistic Occam's razor outcome and then move into what happens. So my assumption then from what we kind of talked into is that we'll start off with Caress deciding to sacrifice herself. It could be a surprise, but ironically enough, in creating these cliffhangers, it's kind of setting us up for like the least surprising outcome possible.
Well, I mean, that's my thing about cliffhangers is that, in narrative shows, for the most part, if it's a cliffhanger, it's usually because, like, at least back in the day, it was like, oh, it's a two-parter. The thrilling conclusion of, or whatever. You don't do at least you don't do a satisfying cliffhanger where you get the resolution in the first 5 minutes or 2 minutes, and then it's a new episode. That's not a cliffhanger. That's just you just cut the episode short and you put the ending 2 minutes at the start of the next episode. That doesn't make any like narrative sense.
Well, I mean,
Um,
it's also weird because Taran, the other episodes that get dropped in the batch are also set up cliffhanger-ish. All of them are set up cliffhanger-ish.
Yeah, sort of. So I'll look at like the cliffhanger for episode 5 was actually the cliffhanger for episode 5 was like QT proposing Tres Fuegos to Kyle, and Kyle's like, "Oh, if I'm an influencer, you can sleep like a baby." So that was kind of a womp womp. Episode 6 was, to your point, the cliffhanger. It was, "Oh my God, who are they going to block?"
Yeah.
And then the episode 7 cliffhanger was, I would say, a legitimate cliffhanger, which was this big revelation of, okay, it is ride or dies, literally.
If they go out, you go out. Yeah.
right, and if they had ended the batch on that, that would have been a great cliffhanger.
That's
I
good.
agree.
Because
Yeah.
that's like, oh my God, new information. What's going to happen? There's a whole set of things that could happen from this. I'm excited to watch all of the possibilities play out. Because there's a whole set of storylines that's going to emerge from that. But when the cliffhanger is you've done everything except the final bit, it's just like it's so bad. And I get it because it's the streaming format, it's the batch dropping format. And I don't mind it when I have the next episode ready to go. And I get that it's probably a good strategy because when I have all 4, when I'm watching episode 6 and the cliffhanger is who gets blocked, I don't want to stop until
Yeah.
I figure out who gets blocked. Now, I'm me, so I just watch the first 5 minutes and then I stop because I'm like mad at them for doing it.
Out of
But like
protest.
right, but like what I mean is that like that's fine. I get it. That's gets them to click the next episode instead of turning off the TV. Do whatever you need to do for the algorithm. That's not happening when you do it at the end of a block of episodes, unless people are watching after the whole thing has come out. So if you want people to be watching when it's coming out to get the biggest bump of numbers that you can get from like the initial burst of viewers, then you know that you're putting out 4 episodes at once. Don't do it at the end of the 4th episode. Do a good cliffhanger. Do something that makes me feel like, wow, I can't believe what I just watched. I can't wait to see what comes next. Don't make me be like, where's the ending? Oh, I have to. Okay. It's just
Well, we'll get
frustrating.
one more version of it, and then it will be the finale. I imagine, because we've done this the past two seasons, I believe, is that the cliffhanger coming out of episode 12 will be the final blocking. It'll be like, so and so is the influencer, and they're gonna go block this person, and that'll be our cliffhanger in. That's the other thing as well, is that it does feel, looking back, like as much eventfulness as we had, only 2 people left this week. And the first week, 0 people left. There are balloons around me.
Why does this keep happening on podcasts?
What was that?
I don't know. But
Yeah, how did some of the podcasters have this thing activated, I guess,
So
but I
it
don't know
is-
how
it
they
is-
did it.
it is something with Max. I think if you download the new OS, it's automatically configurable. Like sometimes if I give a thumbs up, there we go, will pop up in the bubble. That's just my own influence.
Low-key
So
terrifying.
yeah, talk about technology infiltrating all of our lives. So yeah, we're gonna have to go from 8, because we're at 8 now, down to 6. So I imagine we'll get, obviously, the resolution. If we send both Caress and Kyle home in the first few minutes of the next episode, I don't know what we're doing to drag out until we get that cliffhanger 6th place elimination.
Okay, so another reason why I feel like Paul's gonna do the sacrifice is because part of me feels like if they both go out, they're just gonna do what we've seen before. They're gonna shove both of them into a different apartment and give them a catfish to play, is my assumption.
Which would be sad because, again, we talked about this last week, and I loved it here. This is maybe the earliest that we've had a full circle cast. Episode, beginning of 6 was when Autumn and Big J came in. Like, the circle was filled up before the halfway point of the season. That's perfect. I want that. I want the newbies to, like, try to have some time to try to incorporate themselves. I think if we're doing another Jack Atkins, not Lance Bass situation of like, oh, here's so-and-so, they're going to get dragged to 5th place because like nobody's going to try to eliminate them right now. It's unfortunate, though I see your point, Pooya. It would kind of have to be a means to an end if they're forced to double eliminate.
I mean, in my eyes, you just added at least 13% to my likelihood of staying if I choose to not sacrifice. Well, if we both go out, we might have to both come back in as a player because they might not have scheduled for 2 people to leave yet.
Yeah, I mean, but then we're kind of Lowaning ourselves, right? We're like, we'll come back with superpowers. We'll get a new persona to play.
But if you're gone anyway,
no, it might be Max 2.0. They might bring a new version of Max back as a new player.
I mean, that's the thing.
That's the problem. Is AI is replacing all of our jobs, including circle players.
No, honestly, if ever you're in the situation where you're last, I think always pick stay unless you really like the person you're with and you don't want to drag them down. Because I also think there's something to be said about, we talked about these final rankings, and I think there's something to be said about being perceived as very much out of the running and getting a shady 1 or 2 top rankings and then winning the whole thing.
I mean, if Cassie was in the final ratings, you'd be solid.
Yeah, exactly. Big chilling with the money. But no, I'm excited to see where we go from here. Now, Taran, you did mention that you don't love looking at the coming up or the sneak peek. Did you avoid that for this?
I did, especially because I felt like the sacrifice choice was, and I barely watched it, and I felt like it was spoiled for me, so I immediately turned it off.
The good news is that, unlike what happened with Steffi, the preview shows neither Caress nor Kyle. So
they're not in it at all.
As to, one of them's going to stay.
Because there was a moment that they had one of the circle chats in like the background. This player was on the rooftop, and I paused and read it, and I'm very intrigued. And I kind of want to talk about it, but also don't want to rob you of the enjoyment, Taran. So
yeah, and I think we already have some storylines germinating. Even though our mess of Caress, who knows if she's on her way out or not. Big J is more than ready to step in, considering that, to go back to one of our initial points, like, he has been fairly quiet. I think it ended up working out really well that he was partnered with QT, able to, like, get in with her, and I think also pick her brain a bit as to, okay, this is your relationships with these other people, so, like, now let me exploit this against you. I think Jordan is already, despite being only 2 episodes in the circle, done sitting on his hands, and I'm intrigued to see what happens next.
If Kyle stays, how many people are we down to?
7.
That's fascinating, because then let's follow that timeline, because that's my low-key, my ideal. We're down with we have the Tres Fuego with Miles, Kyle, and QT. And then you have Olivia, Lauren, Autumn, and Big J Autumn, who's kind of on an island, but has Lauren. Lauren, who's going to be tight there. Olivia, who doesn't really want anything to do with Miles once this ride or die thing's probably done. So they could steal the power back, which would be very intriguing to me. But I mean, it will all hinge on, are they all going to actively avenge her and form together? Because them just being nice and tight is one thing. But when you have three people who are probably going to be very on the same page with ratings, they're going to beat you if you don't get on the same page.
Not to mention how they feel about the other people as well, right? This isn't like season 3 where it was like two big sides that clearly did not ride with each other. And so we're more than happy to slam each other down. Like Olivia just had this really nice chat with Kyle. QT has a link up with Lauren, or at least is trying to. Kyle is someone that, again, seems very amiable. If you do have somebody coming forward being like, no, we've got to take these people out, they're in the power positions. One of the reasons why they're in the power position is because they feel pretty good and are able to get in good with everybody. So despite how strategic this cast is, it might be easier said than done to be like, no, you don't understand. I know you like the person, but you have to flip your entire game to take them out in this moment.
Yeah, I think the thing I'm most curious about is like, where does Olivia go after, post Miles link up? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, does she return to her previous style of play and allies, or does this unlock something new for her moving forward? So yeah, that's what I want to see.
Yeah, I'm really excited because I do think, to your point, like this could be a natural evolution point for someone like Brandon of like, all right, you threw me in the water and now I'm growing gills. I guess I have to swim along, especially because it's only going to amp up from here where the decisions have to get inherently more strategic, especially once we're sort of looking down the barrel of, okay, this is the final 5. Who do you want to sit in the finals with? And it's this very fun balance that we always see in these games of, do you want to take people that are more likely to take you and vote for you, or are you going to take people that might steal those high ratings from you? And given the timbre of this cast, I would imagine no matter what, they're going to start like taking big shots, maybe from within. I'm not sure. I don't know if Tres Fuegos really seems like that group. If anything, I could see maybe QT being like, no, I got to get rid of maybe Kyle, because I think Kyle is the more dangerous person than Miles. I think it's the thing that she should do, but we'll see. We only have 5 episodes left.
All right. Well, I think that's what we have for you then. We will be back next week to talk through the third batch of Circle episodes. I believe it will be those 4, and then another week before they drop the single finale episode. So we will, we got 2 more podcasts after this next week, and then the finale. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, you can find some Big Brother Canada coverage here on RHAP. We're talking about Survivor, and you can find me over on Twitch, twitch.tv/Taran Armstrong, watching episodes live like Survivor and Big Brother Canada as they air. Mike, what do you got going on?
A lot of stuff. I'll start with the Circle pertinent stuff because I am so happy and fortunate that I've been granted the opportunity to do a lot of interviews around the Circle season. I mentioned it before, but you can already check out my interviews with, again, showrunner and executive producer Susan House and co-EP Niall O'Driscoll to talk about this AI twist. Again, one of like the biggest things to happen to the Circle in the show's history. It was a really interesting conversation about how this came about, how it was instituted, how quote unquote hands off it was, what surprised them about it, some apparent hard and fast rules about Max, like the fact that he was never going to talk negatively about anybody, which now does factor into, again, in retrospect, that like, oh, who should I block, Max?
Left.
Well, great talking with you.
Like
Bye, everybody.
He did frame Steffi though,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blame Max.
That's what I was
Max
most
got
impressed
Steffi
by.
out.
Yeah, maybe it was more so in like a cornering situation, right? Instead of him being in the group chat where he was like prompted, where he was forced to say something, here it was like he was pressured to do it, but not coerced to do so. But still, a really interesting conversation about a really interesting twist. And I can also announce that I am doing Exit Press as well. So by the time you're listening to this podcast, I will already have my interviews up with Steffi and with Cassie, the 2 blocked people this week. Really excited to get both of their thoughts. I will also say, since Steffi was kind of like an afternote in this batch of episodes, I did love that Miles, and makes now so much sense as to why he blocked her, because these 2 were just oil and water.
Oh
when
my
she's
God.
like, oh, hold
She
my
did not let up on him.
Yeah, she's like, oh,
No.
hold my emotional support skeleton. And he just goes, okay. like, you could tell it also worked out for Miles that even if she wasn't an AI, he was more than happy to
Yeah.
get rid of her because they just were not vibing at all.
Oh my God. My favorite part of all of that was her repeatedly saying, so like, did you think I was a catfish? Because you're an AI guy. You like work with robots, you figure them out. So, but did you really think I was though? And just the awkwardness there. We didn't even talk about the people meeting each other in the recap, but that was fun. And then I feel like Cassie gave a bunch of information to Olivia, mainly watch out for Miles and QT, which ends up being a big part of
Unless
Olivia.
there's a big twist where you're forced to work with him. Otherwise, you should be good. So yeah, I'll talk with her and I'll talk with Steffi as well. That's all up at parade.com. And I'm doing my usual Survivor Amazing Race-ish. And I put everything out on social media at a Mike Bloom type.
All right, and Pooya?
You can find me on Twitter at Pooyaism. Find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Pooya. That's where I'm when I'm not podcasting. As far as podcasts go, 90 Day Fiance, I've got Jason Reed on with me this week to talk Happily Ever After. You can check that out. And myself and Leon are talking Masked Singer every week, so you can find that on the feed as well. Oh,
All right, well.
and we may be giving you some MILF Manor content soon come. Keep your eyes on the feeds.
Dear Lord.
Yeah,
Help us
season
all.
2.
Man, there was a moment in time there before you said manor where I was very confused.
Oh, you thought... What'd you think?
Pooya, what tape did you find?
All right. Thank you all so much for joining us here today, and we will see all of you next time.